evening and welcome to SPORLITIKS, where sports and politics mix and mingle. I'm Stacey Johnson. Joining me tonight is Aguna, the Nigerian moderate Republican, Keith, the constitutional conservative,
Lord help us.
and my cousin Todd, who is, I don't know where he is. Anyway,
He's at the U.S. Open.
not yet. According to thehill.com, lawmakers and policymakers alike were caught off guard by Fitch's Tuesday evening decision, last night's decision, to downgrade the U.S. credit rating from a AAA to an A+. Messy has settled in. We will hear more from Aguna. Illegal child labor is on the rise in a tight market. Training camp has begun in the NFL. I'm not going to watch until the season starts. Are you?
You can't do that. You got to see the camp battles.
According to Reuters, first, it was the Stormy Daniels hush money case. Then the retention of sensitive government records. Now Trump faces charges for efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Major League Baseball is still playing. How's your team doing? And how will leadership in the Senate deal with Senator Tommy Tuberville, Republican from Alabama, and his unprecedented blockade of senior military promotions? The Times of Israel says, Lapid, we had deal with Netanyahu on overhaul last week, but he caved to Levin. Ben Gvir, opposition head, says that following failure of compromise efforts to block reasonableness law, he'll only enter talks if coalition legally commits to an 18-month legislative pause. Disney's governing board abolished all of its diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, the district said in a Tuesday news release. Louisiana public schools now required to display "In God We Trust" in all classrooms and more if we can fit it in. First up, Aguna, what's going on with soccer? And then you can go straight into the NFL.
Yeah, so not a whole lot. Now let me couch that by saying MLS still very early in the season. Messi is definitely playing for Miami. Now Miami is not a really great club. It's still, I think it's at the bottom of the East. But because it's a big name, the tickets are going up. So we'll see how the rest of the season plays out, because MLS play goes on until about the November time frame. So still a lot of season left to go, but we'll see if Miami can dig themselves out of a hole and at least make the playoffs. So Philadelphia Union are doing well. I think we're third in the Eastern Standard standing. So hopefully we can at least get back to the finals this year. Now, as far as women's World Cup soccer, now that's gotten pretty interesting. I think with New Zealand, it's being played in New Zealand, and they just got bounced from the group stage, so they're not advancing to the knockout round. The U.S. is advancing to the knockout round, and they're playing Sweden. And Sweden's actually a pretty good team. I think they're undefeated. The U.S. actually had a disappointing outing this year. I mean, they lost. They haven't lost any games, but they tied 2, so they're 1-2 going into the group stage, which means they have to play Sweden, which is the top of their particular group. Now, also Nigeria is 1-2 as well. They they beat Australia 3-2, and they tied Canada, and I forgot the other team they tied, but they're going to be playing England in the knockout round, and they play, I think, Monday night, or actually Monday morning, 3 a.m. because it's in New Zealand. So happy that the ladies made it through to the knockout round, both Nigeria and the U.S., but we'll see. We got some tough. England is pretty tough. They haven't lost. The Netherlands are very tough. I forgot the other teams that are, there are a couple of teams. Sweden is actually pretty good. So it'll be interesting to see how the season, how the rest of the World Cup plays out. But I think Haiti was playing, had a women's team this time. They didn't do very well, didn't win any games, but they at least they competed, right? Switzerland is also is pretty good, but Australia lost to Nigeria, and they're actually at the top of the group. So glad that Nigeria was able to make it through the next round. Yeah, and that's all I had.
Hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good. What's going on with the NFL and specifically the Eagles? And then you can go on to some other teams if you want.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about the Cowboys. The Eagles are having a pretty good camp. No major injuries are coming out. There are a couple of camp battles that are happening. The big thing is that we need to see how some of our acquisitions in the offseason are playing out. So the linebacker from Chicago, Morrow, who is supposed to come in and replace Edwards, he seems to be having a tough time in camp. Again, it's early, so you don't know that these guys are coming from different systems. So this is the time to kind of sharpen the blade a little bit. Edmonds, who is a cornerback from Pittsburgh that we picked up, he may not make the starting job, which you have Blankenship and Wallace out of Clemson, who may end up making that start. And safety is probably one of the biggest question marks with the Eagles defense, safety as well as linebacker. So you really need to make sure that the secondary is shored up as well as kind of that gap coverage on the linebacking core. Some of the rookies that are doing really good is, of course, Carter's doing good, and Smith and the Georgia Bulldogs are stepping up and seem to be unblockable with some of the second team and third team reps. So we'll see, maybe they can make an impact this year starting. So the camp is going pretty well. And I don't know if you saw circulating on social media, but Jalen Smith's screensaver is the confetti, the Kansas City Chiefs confetti coming down on him during the Super Bowl. So it looks like he's pretty focused and locked and loaded to try to get back. And it's very hard to get over the Super Bowl hangover. I think only 3 teams in the history of the NFL have done it: New England Patriots, Miami Dolphins, and the Dallas Cowboys back in the 70s. So the Dolphins and the Cowboys are back in the 70s. So we'll see to get back there and win it.
Explain for people like Cousin Todd, what is the Super Bowl hangover?
Super Bowl hangover means that you play in the Super Bowl, but you don't get back to the Super Bowl. Most times the Super Bowl loser never returns. They seldom even make the playoffs. So that's the hangover. It's like, okay, Atlanta Falcons, when they lost to the New England Patriots, they didn't make the playoffs the next year. Look at the Rams. They actually won the Super Bowl and still didn't make the playoffs the following year. So sometimes the losing teams struggle to even get back to the playoffs. So you don't want to have that hanging over your head. And I think the Eagles are pretty focused, and they want to at least get back there and win it this time. And if you look at the NFC, there's not a lot of competition in the NFC per se. You look at the top 5 teams, I would say, would be the Eagles, 49ers. Maybe you put a team like a Detroit or some up-and-coming team that hasn't proven themselves from last year. But then it looks like
Buffalo.
Well, in the NFC.
Detroit over Buffalo.
In the NFC, not AFC. AFC is stacked. The AFC is stacked.
Okay.
Buffalo, Jets, everybody. But in the NFC, outside the Eagles and the 49ers, you may want to throw the Cowboys in there for good measure. But there's not a lot of, tough teams in the NFC. So we'll see how that plays out. AFC, completely different story. You got Cincinnati, you got Buffalo, you got possibly the Jets, but you got Kansas City. So there's some really tough teams in the AFC, to say the least. So we'll see how it plays out. But I'm excited for the season. This is August, so we're second day in August. So that means the first weekend of August is the first preseason game. And, of course, the season starts in September. So I'm looking forward to, this is the lull, calm before the storm. This part of the year is really boring. The only thing exciting is kids going back to school, but that can be stressful. So looking forward to having football back on Sunday in September.
I just hate when football comes back on Sundays because for me, living on the East Coast, what that means is we're going to have cold weather coming soon. When football comes, it's great during now, the summer. You can go to the games where flip-flops, but that's not going to last forever if you live in the Northeast. Your flip-flops are gonna turn into Timberland boots with some feet warmers and
Yeah.
muffins and hats and you know what I mean? That's the only thing I don't like about and then the weather starts the it starts getting darker earlier in
Yeah.
the evening. That's the worst thing about being happy about football season starting.
Yeah, reason in the season. So you're coming back around the fall. You can wear your fall colors and your boots and stuff, right? So that's a good thing. But yeah, I mean, the first week, September is probably that transition time. So just get it all out. I
So
really tried to appreciate the summer, but it's been a heat wave. But just appreciate the warm days while you can.
so do you want to talk about the cowgirls?
Yeah, so I saw a little article circling the web in which Diggs, what's his name? Diggs' little brother, Trayvon. No, who is it? Trayvon Diggs? What's his name? I don't know. Diggs, the cornerback for the Cowboys, was getting a little chirpy with
Well,
Dak
wait a minute. The
Prescott,
quarterback for the Cowboys. I haven't followed the Cowboys. What happened to Dak Prescott?
the cornerback,
Oh,
not
cornerback.
quarterback, the
I'm
cornerback.
sorry. I thought
He
you said
plays the starting
quarterback. Because
corner.
I'm like,
corner.
isn't Dak Prescott still I thought he was still the quarterback.
He is, and Steph and Diggs got at him. He called him a B word.
Diggs got
Apparently,
at it. Who
Dak
and
is
called who a B
struggling in
word?
camp. Excuse me.
Diggs got it. Who and called who a B word?
He called Dak Prescott a B word
Oh,
because apparently, again, I talked to some Cowboy fans. They said that was competitive behavior. I personally feel that they were imploding, and which they always do, but this time they're imploding in August, which usually is the time that everyone's saying they're going to go to the Super Bowl. So it's good to see them doing it earlier this year, and I look forward
yeah,
to the
yeah.
disappointment for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I love it. We got Nas on Nas. You want to talk about those dirty birds from the South and, what you think they're going to do, if anything?
Oh, what's up, y'all? Uh, yeah, I don't know. I think by the trade deadline, they'll probably try to move a couple players for some more picks. But this is a long-term rebuild, so they're trotting Ritter out there. But I think the guy from Washington, what's his name, Heineken, whatever the hell his name is, I think he'll have the quarterback job by the end of the year. And hopefully they don't give the rookie running back too many carries. Robinson from Texas. Hopefully they don't give him too many carries. But yeah, kind of just got to see what we have this year. Maybe we find out if the tight end we drafted fifth overall, maybe we'll throw the ball to him every once in a while. I don't know. But yeah, it's just a rebuild in a bad division. Like, if we get some lucky breaks and a bunch of turnovers or something to where we're competitive in the division, then I can see them actually grading a little bit, trying to get a little more defense on the team. But we're a really young team. There's really no expectations.
All righty. So we're glad to hear that, aren't we, Aguna?
I kind of feel bad for the Falcons, but
I
at the
don't.
end of the day, you never know. I think when they're good, they're good. Like it's Dirty Bird, everyone jumping around, but when they're bad, that's an empty dome down there. So. But they
But that
got a pretty
infighting,
decent soccer team down there. So I mean, maybe it's not all doom and gloom.
that infighting with the cowgirls is like the best. You couldn't
Absolutely,
even wish
Yeah.
for anything better than that.
When we
absolutely.
were in school, there every once in a while, like the kid who everybody teased, can you get a new shirt or a new pair of shoes? And you just got to deal with Eagles fans. They're not used to having things. So you guys are now upper tier NFL franchise, and it's just y'all can't wear it right, man. Y'all don't feel right. Yeah, y'all wish I could go back to the days of doom and
Nah,
So
it's
enjoy
been a lot of
the
days of
the
disappointment.
traditional Philadelphia output, and it is what it is.
Here, first thing, nah. I mean, the Philadelphia Eagles in the 21st century have been one of the most winningest franchises in the league, right? But they just couldn't
Tell
close the
them.
deal.
Tell them.
We've gotten 10 NFC East championships, 3 NFC championships, 3 Super Bowl appearances. So Is it 3 or 2? 2, 3? 3, right? So it's just one of those things where we're trying to, evolve and maintain. But yeah, it's a reason this season. And thanks to the Georgia Bulldogs, I think we're going to have a pretty much improved team this year.
Yeah, and also let's say that we have a lot of appearances on Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football. Everyone can look forward to watching us, Nas.
No, this is gonna make it better. The fact that y'all excited and really got these high expectations. I can't wait to watch all this blow up in y'all face. I can't wait. I'm gonna enjoy it.
Hey, that's why we play the game. That's why we play the game.
Waiting for Aguna. Wasn't he supposed to eat the hat?
Yeah, he's 6 years later. He still hasn't eaten that hat yet, but I have a feeling he's gonna double down on that this year. So we'll see.
And then choke on it.
No, say that is for a football team to go on a Super Bowl winning run with Nick Foles as the starting quarterback. I stand by that prediction. That was a ridiculous outcome. It started making me wonder if the NFL was fixed.
I think it's fixed. I think it's fixed. I'm no qualms about that. The script was in our favor this time. So who knew?
I'm just joking. I did not believe NFL.
You never know.
Okay.
So wait, before we move on to politics, how are the Braves doing down there? Our Phillies aren't doing like I want them to, but how are the Braves doing down there?
If you saw the All-Star game where basically, spring, understand how to see go. Great Braves team, one of the best we've ever seen. Like every night, hell, they scored 15 earlier today. It just hit what it is, man. It can't be stopped. We're fighting legacy here, man. We're not really playing against the teams this season. We're playing against the great Murderers Row, the Yankees back in the day, the Big Red Machine. Like we're going against those, So I guess y'all got that little Philly team still. Is Bryce Harper okay?
Oh, you got to
keep on talking because I guess he has selective memory. He forgot who stole the NCLS crown from him last year and who put him out the playoffs, and that was the Philadelphia Phillies. So we'll see. All the Phillies got to do is get up the wild card, get in the playoffs. Anything can happen. It happened
like they did before.
Yeah, y'all sound really confident.
Like they did before.
They did before. We just didn't win the series, right? So the Braves, they smelling themselves. You talk about the Eagles fans, the Braves are smelling themselves. We'll see.
Sorry. Okay, sorry. Let's move on to Aguna. You want to talk about now what in the world is going on down there in Disney? Let me share my screen. Disney, they got rid of all their inclusion. Disney's governing district in Florida slashes all the DEI programs, according to CNN.com by Macy Goldfarb and Steve Cotorno, written today, August 2nd at 11:05 a.m. In an ongoing battle between Walt Disney World and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, Disney's governing district, whose current board was handpicked by Ron DeSantis, took control of the district in February, and they abolished all of its diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, which was told to us yesterday. What's going on down there, Aguna? And why? I want to know why in the world Keith is clapping about that. But Aguna first, and then
because
Keith.
I think this is a case in which for some reason the Republican Party has just turned to these culture wars, and they're no longer the party of big company, big business. Apparently, if you have a DE&I program, it's somehow un-American at this point. And what we're talking about procurement processes where this particular district, they may target women-owned, minority-owned, veteran-owned businesses, small businesses. And this is something that has gone on across the government for the most part all the time, where you get these small disadvantaged businesses and you give them equal access to contracts. And a lot of times these small businesses partner with larger businesses in order to win the contracts and to kind of execute the contracts. So it's just another mechanism in order to create commerce. And so for some reason, DeSantis in his quest to out-Trump Trump is using this as a catalyst, these woke, anti-woke, or these attack on diversity and inclusion programs to create a platform there in Florida. Now, I will tell you this, there's going to be a backlash. There's already a backlash. You know, I'm part of the National Society of Black Engineers. We pulled our national conference out of Florida, and we were talking about 20,000 African-American students, because we're not going to go to a place that the government doesn't embrace diversity and inclusion. This is not something that is about wokeness or equality or unfairness. This is about just creating a melting pot, which is America. Also, my fraternity, who is supposed to have our national 2025 convention in Orlando, we've also pulled out, as did Delta Sigma Theta. There's some, so the D9, which has also been a target of DeSantis, this is going to end up bad for him. And I know he's not, right now he's using it to cater to a small little section of his base. But in the grand scheme of things, diversity and inclusion actually helps drive business. It helps. So the bottom line of it is, this particular board, because Disney stripped them of their power before they transitioned over to this new board, they're just trying to make headlines because it only affects the government entities within that district, which aren't a lot of people. So they're trying to make headways and say, okay, we're getting rid of all these D&I programs as if they're doing something, but Disney can still go out and select minority businesses and things like that to do for the parks. This is only a very small portion of the employer and the employment is being affected by that. So again, it's smoke and mirrors. I think the more the Republicans focus on these type of culture wars and trying to hurt people in order to make a point, the more we move further away from what kind of built the party's platform to begin with. The fact that we're even fighting Disney, Mickey Mouse is the enemy of the state all of a sudden. I mean, come on, are you for real? So there are other things and if you look at Florida right now is number 41 in the country or something like that in education. So they have issues with erosion on their coast. There's so many different issues going on with Florida, but they want to fight against wokeness. And I heard that even DeSantis is going after Budweiser. He's going after Bud Light because of their stance on pride and all this other stuff. So you got to pick your battles, but I think this is the one there. Again, you're expanding government in order to impose government's will on the people, which, at the federal level is frowned upon, but for some reason at the state level, it's okay as long as, it's hurting people that you don't like or something like that. So I think it's a wrong way to go.
Let me look at this, Keith. If you look at this quote, can you see it? Let me read it to you. The district administrator, Glenton Gilzian, said, "Our district will no longer participate in any attempt to divide us by race or advance the notion that we are not created equal. The so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives were advanced during the tenure of the previous board, and they were illegal and simply un-American." Do you agree or disagree with that, and why?
I agree 100%, 100%, because look, we're either all men are created equal, and government will secure that right by allowing people to be involved who want to be involved, and just the notion that Aguna said, we're going to remove ourselves, we're going to exclude our kids or exclude our people. So you're creating your own discrimination by excluding yourself instead of going for the opportunity where the opportunity is available. And I say that merit should always be better.
Excluding
you just
what?
said you said you were excluding your kids, not your kids personally, but you said the engineers, the group that you mentioned, were pulling out or excluding yourselves from the programs, right?
No, that's not what I said. I said our national convention will no longer be held in Florida because of their stance on diversity and inclusion programs, because NSBE was founded on the fact of diversity, and they were founded in
Okay.
order to give African American students a way to study and to kind of support them in an institution that didn't have anything or any type of support structure, which was.
So you're pulling out of the program. Okay, so
we're not pulling out of the program. We're not having our national convention in Florida. So as a private entity, we are choosing not to spend our dollars there. So we're not pulling out of any program. What are you talking about? We're just not.
Well, okay, so you're choosing not to have your convention where it is that you used to have it. All right, so that's your choice.
Right. Exactly.
That's your choice. Okay,
True.
Fine.
Okay.
So all I'm saying
so now,
is,
are you finished?
nobody's.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to end it by saying they're not excluding you. You are pulling out. That's all. Okay.
Okay.
They're not excluding us. They're not supporting initiatives and programs that.
Don't hurt yourself trying to comment on what Keith misunderstood, and then have no idea what that mumbling nonsense was about. But to get the hardest stakes question, this is, again, still backlash from 2020 George Floyd riot, protest, and the corporations that decided they were going to change different things about the structure. This is still the backlash from that. DeSantis has found that he can make some political gain off of playing to his base in this way, so he's going to continue to do it. Now, the funny thing about all this is Bob Iger, CEO of Disney, saw all of this coming. So his hand-picked successor was forced out of the head seat at Disney, and Bob Iger came back into that seat because he knew this fight was coming. Not only with them, but also, you got the writer's strike and everything else going on with Disney, because at this point, they're even just canceling shows and different material in order not to spend the money. So they're trying to figure out ways to save money. But as far as DEI and everything else, this is what you should expect after any black movement. You should expect some type of white lash, as somebody on CNN coined the phrase a couple of years ago. So this is all a part of that. And DeSantis, as usual, clumsily plays the role of the cartoon villain. And with this idea about DEI, just listen to what Aguda just said. It's somebody choosing not to spend their dollars in your state because of what you're doing politically. So you're actually costing his state money, and not to mention what it's going to cost as far as talent. Because with DEI, you're able to get access to some of those talent pools that normally would be avoided through the regular hiring process, because people tend to hire people who look like them. So you remove DEI, you save money on staffing because you don't have to pay for that anymore, but it's really going to hurt the state long term. We're looking at a brain drain in Florida as far as college students who decide that's not where they want to be with some of these new policies that they're putting in place, including this anti-DEI thing. So, this is pretty much, Florida is a disaster. You've got a governor who's basically cosplaying as political pundit, because basically everything is based on the election. He's trying to be a factor nationally, and he's doing a terrible job of governing his state, Florida, in real time, because everything is based on, like Aguda said, this idea of he wants to pit his side against the so-called woke. So here we are.
Okay, so let
equity
me move.
means to you skin color. Skin color. That's equity.
So, but here's Stacey. So it's interesting because
Make your point real quick, because I got to move on.
Well, Keith is defining diversity and inclusion. Diversity and inclusion. All right. So it has nothing to do with I'm better than you, you're better than me. It's just making an equal effort to include people that are typically, small businesses included, that aren't part of the process. Is giving yourself access or giving them at least a platform in which they can engage and participate in commerce and things like that. It's a good thing. But
that's
for some
BS.
reason, now that DeSantis is running for president, all of a sudden this is a target, because for a long time, these were conservative Republicans that put these things in place because it helped get veterans.
Still BS.
It helped. So now you're against the veterans coming back and getting certain incentives in order to do
I
business.
don't care. I don't care who it is. If
you don't care about the veterans, you don't care about the women, you don't care about.
No, I don't care about skin color. I don't care about skin color.
They're somehow.
I don't care about
you feel like
economic status.
their gain. You feel like their gain is your loss. Otherwise,
I
it
don't
wouldn't
care
be an
about that.
issue.
I don't care about
You
economic
care about
status or
America
skin
being a
color.
melting pot.
I don't care about skin color. I don't care about where you came from. I care about merit if you qualify. That's all I care about.
So we're not saying that you don't qualify based on skin color. We're saying there are a couple of different things that we can
Sure it
kind of
is.
help promote. What's wrong with that? So
No, that's
are
exactly
you
what it
against?
is.
So let me ask you this. Fine. So against.
There's
So
nothing
what
wrong
about
with that,
tax?
but you're not going to get Keith to understand that. His programming does not allow it. He only knows a few answers. It's similar
I
to
only
an
know what the
NBA
Declaration
deal, okay,
says.
where he has
And
these.
see, you're not going to
play
get. And he's
programs,
absolutely right.
whatever you say, and he's going to
And
continue to
Nas
say.
is right. You know,
Hold
Nas is absolutely
on.
right. You're right, Nas. I'll never understand it
Okay,
because
well,
I follow the Declaration.
And,
I follow the
Keith,
Declaration.
can you shut up for a minute?
Go
Yeah,
for it.
so, I mean, man, Steven's not even here, and I still got to holler. So I'll just make this as simple as possible. Keith, if I designed a program that said I would coach up white running backs and white cornerbacks in order to get them more involved in the NFL process because that group has been excluded based on stereotyping in coaching and being weeded out early on in their younger days. Would you be against me setting up a program to get more white cornerbacks and white running backs?
Yes, but you don't have to make it a national policy. I would not go for that. That would be a decision of the court. Yeah, you don't have to make it a state. You don't have to be a state. You don't have to make it a state policy.
That I didn't bring up. Just deal
You
with
didn't have to. You didn't have to make it a state policy. It would be a policy. It would only be between you and the players and the team and the coaches and those within the team, not the state.
So Keith, it's very ironic because you as an educator.
So basically, well, hold on, Aguna. Let me just explain this because Keith, I guess, couldn't grasp it. So diversity, equity, and inclusion is not about skin color. It's about underrepresented groups who are locked out of certain jobs.
It's about skin color.
When I say white running quarterbacks, you go through the 70s, 80s, you see them all over the NFL. Now we come to the modern NFL where young white athletes are typically pushed out of those positions in youth ball. Hey, what are you doing in the running back line, kid? Get over there and get in the offensive line or tight end, one of those traditional positions that white players typically play. And because of that, they're underrepresented in the NFL. Last big white cornerback we had was the great Jason Seymour for the New York Giants. Now, this is not because those white kids don't have the ability to play these positions. It's because of the bigotry and stereotypes that are kind of ingrained in certain football coaches' minds. And as youth, this is what happens to them. They get put to the side. So if somebody was to do that, you would see a totally different NFL in 5 years because they do have the ability to do it. They're just not given the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. We got to move on.
Can I make one last point?
Real quick.
As an educator, you've benefited from certain programs. Like you go to the store, you can get an educator's discount on certain things. Do you see me getting mad because, oh my God, that's based on some discrimination? We're all equal kind of thing? No, because of your status or your occupation, you get a certain discount. It's the same thing. Same thing about these programs. There's certain things that incentivize or subsidize. Well,
all right.
Okay.
But
according to the Declaration of Independence, that's unconstitutional.
All right. Don't get him started. Look at you, Aguna. You're starting. But thank goodness
he's an educator. This is why California is 40th in the country.
He's not Steven. And if he were Steven, you'd be starting something, but he's not Steven, so he doesn't take this. So Keith, let's start with if you look at the screen, it's CNN.com. Louisiana public schools now required to display "In God We Trust" in all classrooms. This was written by Mario Ogunabaya. Am I pronouncing that right, Aguna?
Yeah, that's right. What a great surname. That's Yoruba.
All right.
Ogun is, Yoruba guy. But yeah, right. Go ahead. I digress.
Thank you. Published at 5:13 p.m. today. All Louisiana public schools are now required to display the national motto, "In God We Trust," inside of classrooms under a new law that went into effect August 1st, known as Law HB 8, officially signed by Governor John Bell Edwards in June, states that each classroom must have a minimum requirement of a paper sign with the religious motto. The author of the bill, State Rep. Dodie Horton, said it doesn't preach any particular religion at all, but it certainly does recognize a higher power. "In God We Trust" motto does not reference any one religion. Critics of the law fear it will further blur the line separating church and state, which follows a pattern seen in Southern legislatures in recent years. What do you think about that law, Keith, and then Cousin Todd?
Well, you guys know what I think about it, but I'll just say that like one of my favorite old time movies, movie I really enjoy was Miracle on 34th Street.
It was
And
Song of
it
the
was
South.
I saw two different versions. I'm sure, Aguna,
Song of the
you saw
South.
that. You remember that, Aguna. And they stood before the judge in a court because they took it to court whether Santa Claus existed. So as it turned out, Santa Claus, the judge says, well, people can believe in Santa Claus if they want. They're free to do that, even though Santa Claus is, part of a cultural thing. And it's not necessarily based on reality. Well, to some people, God is not real either. But we still have the right to believe in God because on our money, it says "In God We Trust." And that is done by the federal banks. So, Aguna, I'm sure you love that. You understand money. And money is okay to put "In God We Trust" on it. So why not in public schools as well? There we are.
Cousin Todd.
Well, one reason is because the Europeans who were let out of the jails to steal America from the natives were doing that to get away from that sort of thing. You see, we weren't supposed to come back into that. You can worship or not. You could be atheist or Catholic or Christian or Muslim or whatever you choose to. So to put "In God We Trust" in every classroom doesn't bother me at all, but I think it's typical and unnecessary. It's a hidden agenda there.
All right, Todd.
We're trying to get more European, before the Europeans conquered America.
I give Todd some
Nas
credit.
and then Aguna. Nas,
Oh, boy.
would you, is that okay for your children?
Oh, boy.
It's not about my children or Todd's children or
Here
Guna's
it
children
comes.
or Keith's children. It's about, well, Thomas Jefferson, I'm sure, is rolling over in his grave. Separation of church and state. They were pretty clear
Here we go.
about that as policy when we look at the founding fathers of the nation. So when I hear somebody who claims to be a constitutionalist, all of a sudden, something like this, where public education, we're actually pushing our religion on other people. And this is going to fall apart the moment it's challenged, because when some kid says, "I want Allah on the wall," and then they take that challenge to court, this is not going to hold up. This is a silly law passed by silly people appealing to the cheapest of cheap seats who are dumb as opposed. And remember, "In God We Trust" wasn't put on the money until like 1955. So this idea that it was always there is like, no, that was another period where, again, when we start getting into things and talking about people like the Taliban, this is kind of policy that they advance in their country, where you have these theocratic states where they just decide they're just going to shove their religion all over everyone else, and in the land of the free, the home of the brave. Again, Mr. Jefferson told y'all, separation of church and state. So, Keith, you have failed as a constitutionalist, and I'm really, really ashamed of you tonight.
Aguna.
Can I make one quick point just to respond? "In God We Trust."
That's up to Aguna.
Real quick, Aguna, just real quick. In the Declaration, you need to read it, sir, because in the Declaration, Jefferson mentions God 4 times as the creator, as the supreme judge of the world, as the divine providence, and as the laws of nature and nature's God. So that's pretty interesting for a guy that did not want God to be unseparated when he actually put God in the Declaration of Independence. All right. Thank you, Aguna.
Yeah, so read the Constitution that you're always talking about, and also notes in the state of Virginia from Thomas Jefferson, where he makes it clear that he is not a Christian, he's a deist.
Yeah, I mean,
he doesn't say
he just needs to visit Monticello and to get
No, he doesn't say
educated
that.
on that. So at the end of the day,
did he get a visitor pass at Monticello?
Yeah, Monticello. My son even knows that Thomas Jefferson was for separation of church and state. It's like
no, he wasn't.
So
you're basing it on a letter that was written.
Stop, Keith. You had your chance. Can I finish, please? Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Your lapdog Stephen isn't here. Your lapdog Stephen isn't here. So govern yourself accordingly. All right. So it's interesting that the Louisiana schools or legislator, whose school system, by the way, is in the bottom 10 of the country, wants to put this logo versus resources and any other things into public schools in Louisiana. You want to throw around logos, but you don't want to fund the schools. And if you walk around our beautiful nation's capital, if you walk around, I'm sure, I don't know how often Keith has come to Washington, D.C. and did the tour. You look around and you look at the government buildings and you look at the Washington Monument. They got the Washington Monument. It's from Egypt. And you look at the Capitol, you have all this Corinthian and Gothic architecture, because those particular city-states, first thing, Greece was the first democracy. And it also highlights the accomplishments of man, not God. Because in Europe, they have all those pillars, they have the churches and the cathedrals, because those were more theocratic states, and the monarchies all catered to the Pope. And those are the things that those people that came up with that beautiful Constitution wanted to get away from. They wanted to separate that. So that's why DC is more about the accomplishments of man versus God, right? Even though we recognize God as being the divine entity that put us on this place, our democracy is based on men coming together, compromising, and coming up with a system in which all men are created equal and all men have an opportunity to experience life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's why you don't have a Washington Cathedral government building up here, because they're looking at man and man's accomplishments. Separation of church and state.
No such thing. In fact, separation of church.
We're done. We're going on to the next topic, Keith.
Yeah. Well, one more thing.
If you look at we have someone, Paper Doll made a comment. They said there are parts of the white population and some of the Black that promote this gaslighting narrative that everything became equal the day that Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. They continue to say these things were unavailable to Blacks, obviously during slavery and for decades after. Now, any type of rectification of this stark imbalance is decried as unfair. Comment from one of our listeners.
Good commentary from the listener. The only thing I would add is the Emancipation Proclamation actually did not free any enslaved people. The areas where Lincoln had control, he did not free them. He declared freedom for the ones who were under the Confederacy, so they were under enemy combatants. So in making that ruling actually did not affect them. So, the strange thing that we have in America where we kind of misjudge what the Emancipation Proclamation actually did. It was a war document, basically trying to weaken the enemy.
All right. Thank you. We're going to move.
You would think that not a single Black was able to succeed back then, but they sure did. There were a lot of rich Blacks. But anyway,
we don't have much time, so we're gonna. We don't have much time, so we're gonna have to move on. Aguna.
No.
They have downgraded.
Yes, Stacey. Yes.
They have downgraded our credit rating from an AAA to a AA plus. Do you want to talk about what that means to a person who is a teacher and is about to start to go back to school when the kids come back in the fall? What does that mean?
Yeah, this goes back to, especially people in the Republican Party trying to talk about the dollar losing value, but then doing everything in their power to make sure that the dollar loses its value by not upgrading moving the debt ceiling and things of that nature. This just means that, you know, the faith and confidence in U.S. currency has been degraded, which will impact our ability to get loans and to, you know, to buy goods, those type of things. They have cascading effects. Now, the interesting thing that's going on right now is that we have such a robust economy that even this downgrade isn't catastrophic, but it just goes to show you the confidence that the markets and the economy has in the U.S. government and its ability to govern. And the scary thing about this is that there are those, especially in the House of Representatives, that think by doing nothing and by basically sabotaging the government in order to get people so angry at the incumbent president or whatever, that they're willing to go down this dark path of destabilization of our economy, because they think once we're in power, it's going to come back anyway. So the economy has been very resilient as of late, but at the same time, it just shows you that, you know, we're entering some uncharted waters in which our functional U.S. government is so partisan that they would rather blow it up. They blow up the economy, blow up these just for political gains. And that's what the market is reacting to. That's what investors are reacting to. That's what this credit rating is showing, is that they're losing faith in government's ability to stabilize the economy and to make decisions that are business friendly without getting into this partisan politics. And you can see it. This is why when you look at this DeSantis issue going against Disney and this backlash of state and local governments against corporate entities, those things have cascading effects. So it's going to be important that, as American citizens, we are cognizant of these things.
Okay, thank you, Nas. What does that mean to someone like me who and I'm not anymore. I used to be a high school teacher, but someone like me who currently is a teacher, someone who is a firefighter, someone's a police officer, someone is a nurse, when that credit rating is downgraded from a AAA to a AA, how's that going to affect my daily life?
Well, I think Aguna laid out everything perfectly. The only thing I would add is this isn't people or this isn't others losing faith in the U.S. dollar. This is others losing faith in our ability to grow. Now, having tools that show that just to pay your normal bills, that's it's normally a parliamentary thing that just gets done. But people have been able to politicize that into an us versus them situation. And now you have to deal with cascading effects. Like Aguna said, what are those effects? Stacey brilliantly laid out her question. Well, you're going to pay more for money, essentially.
What does that mean? How do I pay more for money?
Let me go.
All right, go.
When you talk about housing and when you talk about buying a car, all the inflationary issues that we've had over the past 2 years, this is something that can make the inflation more sticky. Meaning they've done multiple measures to try to figure out ways to wring some of this inflation out of the economy, and they've done a good job so far doing that. But also, when you add on effects that you didn't see coming, you take the risk of having a really healthy economy, as Guna talked about, but regular citizens not feeling it because they're paying so much more for all commodities, rice, coffee, sugar, all the things they use on a daily basis, gas. And then when you start looking at housing and car insurance and all the other things that you normally would pay for, adding this extra bill, that's why I meant the price of money. That's why I meant that, because basically you're paying more for everything and essentially being told to do more with less. So why would anybody aggravate that? Well, for the first, 200 or for the first, 170 years, Americans never thought to do anything like this. It was a new phenomenon, and yeah, it's going to cost you.
Cousin Todd, the downgrading roils the markets. As you look at the CNN.com article, it says U.S. markets fell in Wednesday, which is today, trading following the downgrade of U.S. debt from the highest AAA rating to AA plus by the rating company Fitch. Fitch cited a steady deterioration in standards of governance, as Nas just said, as a major reason behind its decision Tuesday evening. What does that mean?
Well, before I discuss that, let me just say what that caller was saying was not that Lincoln freed the slaves and everything was fine, quote unquote. She was saying white people believe that after Lincoln freed the slaves, everything was equal, which she's saying it was not, just to be clear.
Well, my question is, how do you know it's a she and not a
doesn't,
he?
as our resident white people whisperer, Keith, would you agree with that? Or is that something that's part of your precursor to get to white people's heaven?
Great comment from the person from the listener.
Right. I'm just
Wait,
assuming.
ask that question again, Aguna.
I think Keith believes the same thing. He's saying that everything's fine. Everybody's equal now that, civil
Lincoln.
rights, Emancipation Proclamation, everything's
No,
fine.
just
No
that
need for
Lincoln
diversity and
freed the
inclusion.
slaves.
But
Okay.
it's un-American to think that the things are unbalanced and that Jim Crow had any kind of effect on African Americans after the Civil War. That's un-American. Everybody's created equal.
You're on mute, and I can't turn you off. Keith,
Well,
you put yourself on mute.
during Jim Crow, there were successful businesses in the Black communities of the South that had their, segregated businesses. You know that.
So
what are you talking
Jim
about?
Crow had no effect on African Americans.
And we're talking
I didn't
as
say
a
that.
whole.
It
as
had
a
an
whole.
effect. I could not go to a restaurant in some restaurants in white communities, but I could go to restaurants in Black communities.
So that's fair.
Is that a problem?
So that's
that's
fair.
fair to you.
It's all equal then.
That was fine for me. That was fine for me.
That's just ignorance. So
But
anyway,
I haven't.
You
I
want to
haven't
be Booker
experienced
T.
it.
Washington. You are one
Well,
of
I
Booker
was.
T.
I grew up in California, so California was a non-slave state, so I didn't have any problem. I mean, I grew up in California. I never experienced Jim Crow and segregation the way some people that I know have. There were no drinking fountains.
California is the most segregated state in America.
Well, okay, you say that, but this was still not a slave state. That was done by individuals. It was not by law a slave
Okay, I got to
state.
move on. We're
Keith,
running out of time. Thank you.
Stacey, let me just say
You
this:
should really
the
take some
fact
time
that
to read those.
the fact
I
that
read
Keith
a lot.
is trying to use exceptions, right? Oh, some Black people made money during Jim Crow, therefore everything's fine. It's just asinine and ridiculous. This is why you're
beyond.
I never said everything was fine.
Well,
See,
you said, hey, they can go to
you sound like
restaurants,
you'd make a great attorney because
No,
you keep adding to it. I never
run back the
said
tape.
everything was
You
all
were
right.
like, hey, Black people made money during Jim Crow. Hey,
That's right. Yes, they did. They made money during slavery, just like there were Black slave owners. So how do you account for that?
How many
How
rich
do you
ones
account
were?
for 3,000 free Blacks and Black slave owners in Alabama during slavery? How do you
many
account for
Black
that?
slave owners were there in Alabama?
There were over 3,000. There were over 3,000.
There were 3,000 Black slave owners, Black people that owned other Black people. There were over 3,000, Keith.
There were.
Keith,
you look at the census.
Look, check this out. Hey, time out. Uncle Ruckus, time out. Okay. I know you want to make a point. Okay. So I get your point. But I'm saying your point is an exception, not the norm. Therefore, I don't think you should use that to judge and try to base a comment on. Because you.
And I don't think you should use. And I don't think you should use the opposite to judge. To say that
the opposite,
because
which
of
is
the
majority. So okay.
Yes,
I know
that's right.
Math and science is called witchcraft in your mind.
Oh, really?
Right? So if
Math and
we were to
science.
take a sample size, and we want a certain level of confidence, and we take a sample, right?
So
we look at the people that were impacted by Jim Crow versus the people that benefited from Jim Crow. Which one do you think was more?
Well, you had more. Obviously, you had more people who benefited from Jim Crow. Talking about whites benefited from Jim Crow than Blacks. More whites.
Really? Okay. And so when Jim Crow occurred, right? You're talking about almost a century. You're talking about a century of Jim Crow.
Yeah.
And so now we're looking at maybe about 25 years after Jim Crow and all this.
That's right.
Maybe 25 years. So you think that century, and then even before then, the enslavement of the African Americans, which was a couple hundred years, right? So you think that the last 50 years, eliminating programs put in place in the last 50 years, makes up for all of that?
Well, maybe not,
Okay, I gotta
but
move
maybe it
on.
does.
Of
Thank
course
you.
not. Now you're
We don't
thinking.
know.
Now you're using that brain. Thank you.
Yeah,
Y'all
but you see, I'm not complaining. I think we're coming
All right,
from
let
different angles
Keith
here.
finish your point real fast.
All right, we're coming from different ideas, different thinking, ways of thinking. It's just like Nas says. Nas is absolutely right. Nas, hold on, Nas, be quiet. Nas is very, very right in what he's saying. Nas is right. Hold on, Nas. Hold on. Let me make my point. Nas is very correct. I'm not going to dispute Nas. Nas is right. I don't think the way he thinks. Yet we're both black, same color of skin. And that is, I think, the way a lot of blacks, a lot of conservative
How do you know what
blacks.
color Nas is? We've never seen Nas.
Well,
How do you know what color he is?
No, because he sounds like a brother. I know by his diction, by his way to speak. So,
Racist.
well, tell me
That's
I'm wrong.
racist.
Tell me I'm wrong.
I said you're racist.
All right. So anyway, the point I want to make is that the thinking of blacks. I think like a Clarence Thomas. Let's put it that way. I'm going to use it. See, again, now he's not going to let me talk.
All right, wait,
now. He's not going to let me finish my statement.
Go ahead.
Let me just finish my statement. My statement is this. Simply put, I think like Thomas. I think like Clarence Thomas. He thinks like Jackson. He thinks like Jackson. What is her name?
What does that even mean?
Katani
Jackson.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Keith. Go ahead, Nas, and then I got to move on.
Well, I'm afraid that Stacy won't let me. Stacy, if you don't know the way Clarence Thomas thinks, then you haven't read Clarence Thomas.
Why are you still
going?
What
does that even mean?
This is more for the show.
He's trying to get me, Todd.
Yeah, this is more for the show than it is like a direct confrontation. But when someone says something like, well, there were 3,000 people who were black slave owners. Now, when somebody tells you something like that, the good thing to do would be to go to the data and find out what actually happened. So, Claims of Kinfolk by Michael Gomez, really good book. You know what it gets into? It gets into the black folks who not only had to buy family members and pool their money to buy family members. Once you did that, because of the bill of sale, it would be listed as what? You were a slave owner. When in actuality, you're talking about families, and I know conservatives would usually be behind this, getting families back together by pooling their resources to make sure they could get their family. So Claims of Kinfolk. Look up that book. That'll give you the data on that ridiculous smear that Keith tried to lay out as if there were just multiple slave owners living in Alabama as black people. So, it's just unfortunate. And when you have this conversation and you say, okay, well, Jim Crow affected these people, but there were some rich people. That was Keith's answer. So when you go to Jim Crow, what you want to look at is lifespan, caloric intake, housing, and also you really want to look at what class they were in or taxes and what kind of occupation they had. So when you start looking at that data, you look at the whole aggregate of black folks during that era, you'll see these huge discrepancies that you don't see anywhere else in the world, in the modern world now, because that's how bad Jim Crow was.
Okay, thank you.
The legal policy only similar to apartheid. So, for somebody like Keith to say, there were some store owners or there were some people who were rich, like it's a totally disingenuous conversation. And, I'm kind of sad that a black person is still saying things like this. Right?
Well,
so,
Paper Doll made a comment.
Wait a minute, and then I got to move on. Paper Doll made a comment. You see it on the screen. It says 3,000 free blacks and millions of enslaved black people.
There were 3,000 free blacks in Alabama during that period either, especially. Remember, there was another provision, especially in Alabama and South Carolina, where if you did become free, you had to move because they did not allow free blacks to stay within their municipalities.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to share my screen. Should you be worried about a summer COVID-19 outbreak? What you should know about the latest COVID-19 surge, written today, August 2nd, Wednesday, 2023, updated 2:48 p.m. by Faye Chu. Can you see the screen, what you should be worried about? That recent data from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention suggests that a summer surge of COVID-19 could be underway, although not as significant as in past summers, but by some measures, the number of coronavirus infections is rising, along with test positivity, emergency department visits, and most alarmingly, hospital admissions. Why could this be happening again? How worried should people be? Um, does anyone want to talk to this, or do you want me to say what the doctor officially said as you see on the screen?
What did the doctor say?
The doctor said we are now in the fourth summer of the coronavirus pandemic. Every summer thus far in the United States has seen an increase in COVID-19 cases. Some of this may be due to the cyclical nature of the coronavirus. We've seen an increase in cases followed by a relatively quieter period, followed by another increase. This may well be the pattern going forward with 2 or more of these waves of infections every year. One of the reasons could be that people get together indoors when the weather is very hot. This could explain why there are an increase in infections around holidays when people gather in larger groups in enclosed spaces.
Okay.
Well,
It is
let me
important
just
to note
say,
that this
let me,
current,
oh,
excuse me,
go
let me
ahead.
finish. It's important to note that this current increase does not appear to be driven by the emergence of a new variant. According to the CDC, all existing variants are offshoots of the Omicron strain, which first emerged in late 2021.
Right.
I
All right,
guess,
so let me move on.
oh, you
Go
don't want
ahead. What
to
did you want to
comment?
say?
Well, Todd was going to comment that I'll go after him.
Okay.
Todd,
Well, I was just going to insult you and say that strangely, you want to hear from the doctor when we had a doctor on the show telling you about the coronavirus, and you and your boyfriend called her a quack.
I never called her a quack. Stacy, will you confirm that? Did I call her a quack?
Keith never called her a
Y'all were quacking
Stephen.
like ducks. Y'all were quacking like ducks at the doctor.
I never called her a quack. Only thing I'm saying
Yeah. So,
is that she like many of the
just
other
real quick,
doctors.
just real quick, because I mean, what we're doing right now, people going to argue about whether you say quack or not. So there has been a new strain found in India. They're dealing with that now. I don't know if we can even trust the Chinese numbers because they got hit hard by COVID through the lockdowns, and people aren't really talking about it anymore. And basically, this is a extension of the failure from the Trump administration and the Biden administration, who basically listened to the business class and said we had to get commerce back rolling. We're just going to deal with the fallout. So this is us dealing with the fallout.
Okay, I'll say.
And because,
Yeah.
well, you shouldn't say anything. And
Well, but I will
because of
say
our
something.
negligence, we're
Much
going
to
to
your
lose
chagrin.
a lot of people. We're seeing that.
Okay, go ahead, Keith.
So,
What did you want to say
yeah.
real quick? And I got to move on
Sorry
because we're
to-
out of time.
Yeah, sorry to disappoint you, Sarah, but I will speak. And I'm going to say that, we have in California. In fact, I sent you the article, Stacy. In California, somewhere in Northern California, we have there's this COVID, some kind of a research center or something dealing with doing studies on the virus. It's from China. And I don't know much about it other than that it exists. And I don't know why they're here in California. But anyway, the point I want to make.
What are you actually saying? What are
I'm
you
going to
talking
make my
about?
point. If you just shut up and listen.
There's
I'm
someplace
gonna
I
make my
heard of,
point.
but I don't know, and I don't know. I heard it and it wasn't. And
Okay, I
then,
got to move on. I got to move on.
All
Make
I
your
said.
point, Keith.
what the hell
Keith,
are
you're
you
all
taking
I
talking
minutes
said
to make your
was.
point.
All I said was
about? And I don't know about it, but you know what?
Yeah.
Based on my medical expertise,
Well, I have it in
COVID-19 is no longer here. It's a herd
I don't
immunity.
have it in front of
And that's
me.
what the
What I
people
mean
say.
is that
That's not me.
I
It's
don't
Keith
have it.
talking. That's the people.
Well, I don't have the
Thank you.
time to go over
This
the
is
whole
our
thing,
round table. Thank
but it's
you.
there.
Keith.
All right. Thank you.
I don't have the
First,
time.
Stop bringing a
Excuse me.
slingshot to a gunfight, Keith.
I don't
You're
have
gonna
the
get,
Excuse
time
me,
to
you're
go
gonna
over
get
it.
blown up.
excuse
That's
me.
what I'm talking
Oh,
about.
sorry. Go ahead,
First-
Stacey. Sorry.
First, it was a Stormy Daniels hush money case. Then the retention of sensitive government records. Now Trump faces charges for the efforts to overturn the 2020 election, his third indictment. This is our roundtable discussion. We are out of time. We're going to start with Keith, then Nas, Aguna, and Cousin
I
Todd.
gotta hear this.
What about the
Where's my
president,
popcorn?
former president's third indictment, and how will he be able to win an election indicted 3 times?
Well, if he's had 3 indictments and he's still not in jail, what does that tell you? Either they are very they're very, very weak in being able to put him in jail with
Has
some
the
real
trial
evidence,
happened? Has the
or
trial
maybe
happened?
he's avoiding it.
He didn't go to court yet.
They want to.
Has the
and so they
trial
wanna-
happened?
He
and so
didn't
they
go to
want us-
court yet.
And so they want a speedy trial, which they put off until May of next year. So
Who?
that's not a speedy trial. And that's what
Who
the judge
requested
said.
that, though? Keith,
The
who
judge-
Anything else
but
you
the
want to make
judge
a
said.
comment about, Keith? This is it. This is our
Well,
roundtable.
Well, once again, I've got three ideas that are opposed to mine, and it's very difficult to talk over them. And number one, and number two, I couldn't
Good.
possibly talk over them and give all of the evidence and information that Stacy brings up. When we have this wasn't on the agenda. None of this was. Well, this was, but the other stuff wasn't. And I'm not upset at you. I'm not upset at you. I'm not
Wait,
complaining.
Well, let me explain.
Stacy,
Let me
hold
explain,
on. Let me
Keith.
finish. All right, let me finish. I'm not complaining about it. I'm just saying that under the circumstances, there's no way that I could pull up the evidence and put it on the screen. I can't do that. So I just have to go with very choppy information. That's why I do it the way I do.
Some of the evidence in your head, you can memorize.
I can't.
You know the topic well
No.
enough to speak about.
Yeah,
No,
that's the
because-
thing.
Okay,
You
so
don't
I
know
need
that.
because we bring
comment.
up.
The
Go ahead,
reason
Stacey.
why we went over a few things that weren't on the agenda that I sent 2 days ago. I send an agenda 2 days in advance to give everyone an idea of the news topics that we are going to cover. We cover news, breaking news, political news, and sports news. So 2 days ago, certain things were more apparent than others in terms of political news. But today, other news came to the forefront, and we covered things that were newer in terms
Current,
of news, and that's why we talked about it.
Well, again, I'll just close out with
Diversity
this.
and inclusion.
The
Keith is a
diversity and
senior citizen.
inclusion.
You didn't give him ample enough
Not only
time to
that, but
process
in God we
this.
trust. In God we trust. Separation of church and state, and then of course the other one that we just dealt with. And so these things, these kinds of things that they come up with.
Open book test every week. She sends you
Well,
the topics
you see-
and you can't speak to them coherently. How does that
Well-
happen? But anyway, I know you.
Well, I can't speak to them when you have 3 people talking over
these
you.
indictments. But the rest of us.
Okay, so let me
It's
share.
easier to
He
lie
got
about it.
indicted for a
I
third
want to
time.
share.
What
I
else do
want
you
to
need to
show
know?
our listeners what I'm talking about. So if I go to political news and I go to thehill.com and you see this, thehill.com, and you look over here, let me make it bigger to the left. I'm sorry, I'm going to make it a little smaller. And you see that to the left, it says just in. Does anyone see that? Where it
Yep.
says just in. Underneath it, it says new law requires all Louisiana public schools display In God We Trust. State watch 7 minutes and 32 seconds ago. That's news
Yeah.
that just came up that was political. And that's why I covered it. So it's
That's
not like
fine.
it's something that I am making up or adding much.
Well,
I
no,
am
I
adding
never
it
said
later,
that.
but it's new news that comes up.
Yeah,
Just
that's
like
good. I never
you
said
are
that.
see that
discriminating
27
against a
minutes
senior
ago.
citizen. You're discriminating against a senior citizen on the
Manufacturers sued
show.
over risk of stomach paralysis. Don't call it
Stacey,
a
you're
coup.
missing
1
the point.
hour, 1 minute ago.
You're missing
There
the
are
point,
a lot of
Stacey.
new news that comes in. And we just cover some of the news that comes in that I think you would know about and that the contributors on this show would know about. I thought you would know about church and state and schools, Keith.
Well, I
He
do, but I
needs
can't bring
time
up
to
all
make
of
up a
that.
lie.
I can't bring all the evidence up. I don't have the time.
But you can't expect him to think on his own.
No, I can't expect to bring up the evidence
In fact, I
very
think,
quickly.
Stacey, I think it's very
Because
insulting.
evidence is not
I think
not
it's
going to
very
be brought up so
insulting.
quickly.
Stacey, I think it's very insulting that you would.
And I think it's very insulting to have such young
Keith
punks.
Keith can think on his own. See, he's getting ornery. He's getting ornery. You see,
well, I think it is.
I don't think it's fair that you think Keith can think on his own without Stephen here to help talk over people. Because
and I think
if he's forced to talk about the topic, he's not going to be able to talk about it. He's got to defer to Stephen.
I can't talk about it with three people talking over me.
Topic of indictments because he threw a toddler-like fit again. So we're avoiding the conversation.
Okay, so go ahead.
We didn't even talk about Dr. Fauci.
Thank you, Keith. Go ahead, Nas.
We didn't talk about Dr. Fauci or Hunter Biden's laptop. These are go-to differentiating or gaslighting things that Keith does in order to avoid the topic. You know, so
Nas,
I think it's insulting, Stacey.
And then Aguna, and then Cousin Todd on the Donald Trump's third indictment, and then we gotta go. Nas.
Let's get the ball rolling on this. So basically, we have the person who has committed so many crimes and is so bad at it that, from the looks of this, the presidential election is the last thing that he should be worried about. He's actually accused of using his supporters' funds that are supposed to go for re-election in the super PAC in order to pay his legal bills, which are continuing to mount. And it looks like a lot of people that were around him are going to go to jail. Some of these lawyers, the kid who moved the boxes down at Mar-a-Lago, the kid who he told to go and erase the tape of the video where they have him moving the boxes. And when he's getting interviewed by the FBI, if he saw the materials, and he said no. And the FBI personnel said, okay. Now, when you sit down with the FBI and they ask you a question, and they say, okay, and don't press any further after you give them a definitive answer, you're going to jail for a long time because that means they got you dead to rights. So this is a disaster, the most disgraced president in the history of the United States. And these indictments are going to continue to mount. And guess what? Street guys don't like going to jail for other people because they won't tell. But lawyers and politicians, these people don't know anything about hard prison labor or anything like that. These people are up on him. So, this is a disaster.
So let me ask you real quick, Nas. Will he be able to govern? Will he be able to win and govern in jail? The Constitution doesn't say that he cannot.
Well, famously, Eugene Debs, the socialist from way back in the day, ran while in jail. So there's no rule saying you can't run while you're in jail. But again, the mounting legal bill. We haven't even gotten into the Saudi Arabian $2 billion to him and Kushner's fund that has still not been accounted for. So, I just don't see how legally he's going to be able to run just because he's going to be so bankrupt by the time this process is over. High-dollar K Street lawyer from D.C., you're talking what? $1,000 an hour, billable hour, $1,500. Well, I'm at $2,000 possibly. A case of this magnitude. Yeah, he's going to run out of money quick. I don't know how long he can milk his supporters, but that well's going to run dry too.
Aguna.
Serious trouble.
Okay, thank you, Aguna.
Yeah, I got to hand it to Trump, though. What better way than to keep the grift going, right? He spent almost he has over $40 million in legal fees so far, and he's getting it from his super PAC and his supporters. So basically, he's running for president just to pay his legal fees. Nas is exactly right. And what I have, the question I have for other Republicans or people who claim to be Republicans, conservatives, whatever, is this the best we can do, right? Is this the best you can do to support a candidate, whether or not you think that the weaponizing of the government, the Justice Department, all this other conspiracy BS, but for this man to put himself in this position that he's gotten 3 indictments, and for you to still rally around, he hasn't articulated what the platform is going to be. He hasn't articulated what he would do better in the government. He didn't deliver on any of the promises he made in the last campaign. Yet you want to jump behind him and his 3 indictments and vote for him as the best that the Republicans can do in this primary. Over than Tim Scott, even DeSantis, people with track records who have actually governed to a certain degree, not someone who's calling and being a victim. You don't like for African Americans or minorities to claim that they're victims. Yet that is the premise of Trump's argument, that everybody's against me. The people that used to work for me are against me. The government is against me. Everybody's against me, and only I can fix all of this. Oh, by the way, give me your money so I can pay my legal fees. This is going down as the biggest grift. in world history. I have never seen a leader get away with some of this stuff where people are giving him more money. Every indictment that comes out is ridiculous. It just shows how gullible that the American people can be. And this shows how fragile democracies are. Because again, the reason why the founding fathers were so adamant about what was in the Constitution, adamant about separation of church and state, was because they didn't want people to fall behind a dictator. And he's a populist. He's not even a conservative. He's not a Republican. He's a populist, and he jumps from position to position based on what money he can get or how he can extort you or what he thinks you want to get from him. Because again, people like Donald Trump, they don't like his policies. They just like the fight in them. They like the banter. They don't peel back the onion and actually understand what he's doing. Because if he does what he did to all the people that work for him and the people that were close to him, just imagine what he would do to you.
Are you a Republican?
Thank you.
Are you a Republican, Aguna?
No, Keith, you tell me.
If he wins,
you tell me.
How do you feel about it?
You tell me. Am I a Republican?
No, I'm asking you.
Okay, thank you.
Cousin Todd. You can choose.
This is round
No,
table.
the question is.
There is no question, Cousin Todd. This is round table.
Aguna left out the major part of what Trump says to these people, that he's doing all of this for them. See? He's doing it all for Keith. And I'm going to fight for you, Keith. Now send me your money and I'll fight for you. I don't know how much money Keith has sent to Donald Trump, but this is how he gets these gullible people, which is a disgrace. And I always feel sorry for these people because
I don't.
You don't?
No. They're not gullible. They want to believe him.
Well, some of them are gullible, like Keith and Stephen.
Keith wants to believe him.
Well,
he's got a dog in the fight. He's angry. He's an angry old man who he wants to blame people for stuff.
I pray for him.
Let Todd finish. We're out of time. Let Todd finish, please.
Well, and then you have the racist white people who like him because he's against Mexicans and he's against the blacks, and so that excites them. So that's why he's their guy. But the other people who are, and I can understand that. If I were a white racist, I would like Trump. And so, but the people like Keith are just confused. And well, I mean, let's face it, Trump doesn't want Keith or anybody who looks like him backing him. But nevertheless, it's just a shame that these people are giving this man their money for no good reason. They gave him $200 million before, and now they've given him an extra $40 million. And this was to stop the steal. He wanted you to help him stop the steal. And how much money has he spent on stopping the steal? You know, Keith?
Okay, thank you.
Nothing.
Todd, are you finished?
There was no steal.
There was no there.
And when you say, oh, they just wouldn't take it to court, that's silly. If you don't have proof, you cannot go to court without any proof. Now, this is how Trump just got himself in trouble. And Keith just said, why isn't he in jail yet? You see, these are the kind of people Trump loves. You have to go to court before you go to jail. You see, he hasn't been convicted yet.
He's been to court.
Oh gosh.
He's been arraigned in court. He hasn't been to trial. Come on, Keith, stop.
Okay.
He's been to court.
Mike Pence actually reversed course.
Why was he arraigned?
Mike Pence came out and said, I stand behind the Constitution, not behind one man. They tried to persuade me to go with a crooked lawyer scheme of a vice president having the power to overturn an election. And he said also, I didn't have the power anyway. This was it was an old school folksy term he called the lawyers, but essentially incompetent lawyers aside of Trump, Eastman, and it can be in serious trouble, man, because the Kraken lady and all of these people.
Fake electors.
Orange flames.
Okay, thank you.
Rudy Giuliani's
We're out of time.
from
Well, one
harassing
thing is
his
for sure,
secretaries
guys.
come out as well. So
We'll
it
find
just
out.
gets worse.
Cousin
Which
One thing
Tommy,
is for
thank you.
sure,
You
we'll
finished your
find
point.
out.
Keith, who's
We'll
more
find out.
conservative, Mike Pence or Donald Trump? Who's more conservative?
Laguna, let
Trump.
Todd finish.
Trump. Yeah.
Trump.
So my point in saying all that was that Trump loves these kinds of people like Keith. And so all of the things that Trump did, I think this court case should be televised. Now, federal court cases aren't televised, but I think they should make an exception because the public needs to hear the truth, not conspiracy theories, not Fox News kinds of truth, just the facts. That's it. That's what you hear in court, or simply the facts. No conspiracy crap. No, I thought. So what Trump is going to say is, I thought I won. And what the lawyers are going to ask is, why did you think that? Who did you talk to? Did you talk to your attorney general who is in government? Who is your attorney general? Yeah. What did he say? He said you lost. Yeah, but then I called a quack lawyer and he said I won. So they're going to walk him through all of those nutty ideas and things that he did to think he won, because that's his defense, that he thinks he won. He thought it then and he still thinks it. So this is why I think it should be televised. It should be mandatory watching. And that way his supporters like Keith
it's
will
not going to
hear
matter,
the truth.
though, Todd. It's not going to. Keith just said,
Okay, we're out of time.
He said that Trump is more conservative than Mike Pence. He said Trump is
We're
more
out of
conservative
time.
than
I'm
Mike
sorry.
Pence.
We're out of time. Thank you.
Trump is more conservative
To
than
our
Mike
first
Pence.
But he hasn't heard the truth
Excuse
yet.
me. Okay. To our first responders in our communities, you make our lives livable. Thank you, thank you, thank you. To our women and men of the U.S. military for all you do in sacrificing your lives so that we are free to say whatever we choose on this show. We are forever, forever indebted. On behalf of Aguna, the Nigerian moderate Republican,
Mind is a terrible thing to waste.
Keith, the constitutional conservative,
He doesn't even believe in it.
Stephen, the independent thinker who isn't here,
Yeah.
and my cousin Todd.
The B-boy Todd. Go ahead and break dance. Beach Street 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Thank you, Nas, for joining us, and thank you for your insightful commentary. We'll see you next week, same time. Check us out on Instagram, like and subscribe on YouTube. Check us out on Twitch and Twitter, and also check us out on Stephanie Stallworth's The Flow Television Network. We'll see you next week live, 7:30 p.m., even though some people on this show come late.
Not me. I'm always on time. Except tonight.
Well, we actually did have a good conversation. Tantrums from here and there that kind of messed up some of the flow. Besides that, though, we kind of got in this thing.
Yeah, we just look. I'm all for conversation, but dang, just know the topic. Come on, Keith. You need to know these topics. I mean, you don't need 24-hour notice so you can go and watch Fox News. You should know this.
Well, I like to be accurate.
Talking
You guys don't give me enough time to be accurate, so I have to give you short answers. That's why. So it doesn't work.
So you admit you don't know what you're talking about. That's an admission of.
So basically, you just don't like the answer. It's not that I don't have the answer. It's just that you just don't like it. That's all it is.
It's
You
not
just
a matter
disagree
of
with it.
opinion.
You just
Keith, we
disagree
can go
with
back
it.
and forth on opinions.
You just disagree.
No. Well, I mean, did he do it or not? He got 3 indictments. Tell us how you feel about it. Very simple.
I just told you. I said the 3 indictments are a bunch of BS. They're
Okay.
bogus.
But this is
So
what I
that's
was
it.
saying. That's why he has to watch it in court when they're asking him things like, who told you lost the
They're
election?
trumped up. They're
Wait.
trumped up charges.
Wait, what? Tell me specifically, what is a trumped up charge?
The SAG told
They're
man.
trumped up charges.
Tell me what charge is trumped up.
Do you understand?
Conspiracy to defraud the United States. Conspiracy to defraud the.
Like if
See,
somebody
there he
was a
goes.
mayor, like a
I can't
president.
talk when he's talking. See, he's not
Okay,
going to
you
let me
gave
talk.
me
I'm
one.
not saying anything anyway.
You
Conspiracy
said conspiracy to okay.
To
Let's deal
defraud
with
the
that
United
one.
States.
Let's
All
deal
right.
with that one.
In what
Why
way
do
has he
you
defrauded it?
I'm going to tell you. How do
Yeah.
you think he did not? He did not
Well,
because of
No,
what?
you have to prove. You have to prove
Okay.
that he did.
All right, I'll prove it. You ready?
Go.
What he did was lost the election. That's number one. And all of his people told him you lost the election. His attorney general said you lost. He said, I don't believe that. He said, I'll do an investigation. He did an investigation, and it turns out he lost. He said, I did the investigation, and you lost, sir. Now what, Keith? Now what?
He went and raised money on the fact that don't forget, he went and raised money on the fact that, this is a fraud, all this other stuff. He made a riot. He inspired a riot.
Right, but wait, let's take this conspiracy.
Did that happen or not?
I know, but you got to go slow for Keith. I just proved
Not being honest. Simple as that.
Me? I'm not being honest? You're saying I'm
I'm
not
not
being
talking-
honest?
I don't mean this show. I'm talking about. I meant to
Oh.
say the people that are running the country.
Oh, okay.
The people that are running. I'm talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, keep it in the context of what I'm talking about. The whole case is fabricated. All of this is because Trump is running for president, and they don't want him to. Simple as that.
Did he do it or did he not do it?
Who's they?
They meaning Merrick Garland and his gang. The DOJ has been weaponized to go against Trump.
See, now
and all of
got
these
his
people
Fox
are
News
under Biden.
talking points. Did
That's
he
right.
do it or did he not
That's
do
right.
it?
Well,
It does
Fox
nothing-
News is correct.
The thing is,
Fox News
for
is the
him-
only one giving
but
you
you,
this.
do you
All right,
understand?
we got 1 minute. 1 minute.
Yeah.
Do you understand that for Trump to put himself in that position to be weaponized against is a tremendous? I mean, he's not a victim here. He put himself in this position, right?
Because he's
And
trying
you're
to.
not
He
even
wants.
holding him accountable. You refuse to
Because
hold
the
Trump
administrative
accountable
state-
for his own actions, which is a
No,
big
these people-
hypocrisy.
His actions are not. There's nothing illegal about what he did. He didn't do anything illegal.
Like what?
The actions,
Say otherwise.
like for example, getting papers. And he has that right as the president of the United States.
He's not the president.
and
He
he has
admitted.
that right.
He admitted
He
that
did
he
it.